Welcome to Retirement Ramblings. I'm Scott, and today is day 138 on my countdown to retirement. Plus, this is going to be a long one because it's a countdown that covers from day 153 all the way down to day 138. So I'm trying to give you a catch-up of what's happened over the last 2 weeks while I've been on my bucket list cruise that took me from Southampton, United Kingdom, over to Bruges, Belgium, and then on to Amsterdam, the Netherlands, 3 cities in Norway, and 3 cities in Iceland. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. So starting with day 153, which was August 1st, 2025, my wife and I took the red eye from Atlanta to London Heathrow. And we flew British Airways on a Boeing 777, which is in a 343 configuration. And when I booked the seats, I booked based on the seat layouts that we were going to be in the exit row. So I'd have about 5 feet in front of us that we'd be able to get up, move around. It wouldn't be problematic. And again, it was going to be a 343, and we were going to be the left 2 of the 4 seats facing kind of the bulkhead. Anyway, when we got on the plane, that's not how it was. In fact, there was a row in front of us that was misrepresented on British Airways site, both on the flight out and also on the return. But we knew about it on the return, so we could change our seats to accommodate for what we learned. Anyway, luckily for us, there weren't anybody else in the row with us. So my wife and I had the 4 seats that we could then, adjust our seating positions and have much more space if she wanted to lay down or I wanted to lean into the seats or whatever, because it's a long flight from Atlanta to Heathrow. Anyway, on the flight, they served dinner. You had a choice of a chicken dish or a vegetarian curry dish. I took the vegetarian curry. It was pretty good. And then later on, they presented you with a chocolate caramel cookie as a snack. And then even later than that, you got a ham and cheese croissant. Anyway, all the food on British Airways was good. The thing that, again, I guess is a British thing is, they don't serve ice. And so, for an American, that's like, a major faux pas. So, I had to keep asking to get ice or whatever because I just can't drink warm sodas and, warm juice, whatever. It's just not something I'm used to doing. Anyway, on the plane ride over there, I generally can't sleep on a plane. So I watched Rami Malek in The Amateur. That was a pretty good movie. Anyway, that's what happened for day 153. Then on day 152, which was August 2nd, we arrived in London, Heathrow, about 11:20, 11:30 in the morning. And then I had booked the Hilton Garden Inn on Terminal 2 at Heathrow. Well, we came in on Terminal 3, and again, the layout indicates it's a pretty short walk to go to the hotel. So we collected our 4 bags and we were getting ready to walk over to the hotel. Well, it's not as short as the drawing makes it seem. It's like a freaking mile to drag your luggage with you. So anyway, we made our way over to the Hilton. And then, and one of the things that was really interesting was, unlike in Atlanta where you've got trains and other things that move you along, they've got moving sidewalks, and their moving sidewalks, the metal is pretty aggressive. It literally chewed up wheels on my luggage. So now I'm gonna have to go, hopefully, be able to find replacement wheels because they're just shredded from using the moving sidewalk. And it was carpeted elsewhere, and it was just way too hard to pull across the carpeting. So anyway, we got to the hotel around noon, and the actual check-in time is 3 p.m. And so the Hilton charges, even though I'm a Hilton Honors member and whatever, they charge £25 if you want early room access at the airport. And so that ends up being $33.29 with a conversion rate And I was so tired because, again, I can't sleep on the plane. I just wanted to get to the room, take our luggage there, and be able to lay down. So I paid the 25 pounds. We got access to a room. We went up to the room, and literally my wife flopped down on the bed, and it wasn't even a minute later, and she was out. So while she got herself underway, I called the driver that we were going to be using to transport us down to the ship the following day to make sure that we coordinated where our meetup points were going to be. And then, because it's the UK, I had a universal power adapter, and so I was plugging it in to be able to convert the plug types so that I could use my CPAP. And it took me a while to get the adapter to fit in the holes enough where the power lights would stay on. Once I did that, I then have a four jack expansion. It's not a surge protector because you can't use those, but it's just a power pack, I guess, that allows you to have 4 other things plugged in as well as USB connectors, whatever. Plug that into the universal connector, and then once that was hooked up, I was able to hook up a USB fan. I was able to get my CPAP going, and plop down, and pretty much 4 hours later, I was up, but for those 4 hours, I was pretty much unconscious. And then we looked around at the available food options and decided that we were going to stay at the hotel because to take the train into the city was going to be 25 pounds each way. So it was going to cost me 100 pounds just to get into the city before worrying about what we were going to actually eat. So we just decided, there was 2 restaurants in the hotel. We checked out both of them and decided, which one we were going to go with. We went down and we ordered our dinner, in the hotel. I had a steak and ale pie along with mashed potatoes, a small salad, green beans that were in garlic sauce. It was pretty good. Ended up costing me 23 pounds. My wife had fish and chips, and other than the fact that she wasn't expecting it to still have the skin on, so she had to peel that off, she seemed to indicate that was okay. And then we got 2 Diet Cokes, which taste different than Diet Coke in the U.S. because they use different sweeteners. But anyway, with the two sodas and the two meals, ended up being $66.57 USD, which like I said, was way better than taking a ride into the city. The food was okay. And then after that, we went up to the rooftop lounge, and I was able to film the view over the airport where you can sit there and watch planes taking off and landing. So that was good. And then eventually we went back to bed to get ready for our transport the next day down to the cruise ship. So that ended day 152. And then on day 151, which was August 3rd, that was the day that we were actually going to start our cruise. So we met with the driver at 10:30 in the morning. He used a hybrid Toyota Corolla and took us down to Southampton to get on the ship. It was about an hour and 45-minute drive, and I was amazed at the amount of traffic on a Sunday, going down Southampton, but it was pretty busy. Anyway, we got down to the boat. We had scheduled check-in between noon and 12:30, and I've got to give NCL props. Their embarkation process was the quickest and smoothest of any cruise line I've ever been on. I've been on Princess, I've been on Carnival, I've been on Royal Caribbean, on multiple ships, even on the Oasis of the Seas when it was first launched, and they had built a dedicated terminal for it down in Miami. So I just couldn't believe how easy it was. Literally, the driver took us up to a drop-off point. I got out, got the luggage, paid the guy a tip, and walked the bags over to a porter, handed it to him. He swept them away. I walked inside, showed him went through security, showed him my passport. They gave me a room key, and I walked on the boat. I mean, total time was maybe 12 minutes. I mean, it was ridiculously quick. I never had that happen before. And then once on board, I had to go to deck 7 to the Prima Theater, which was going to be our muster point in the event, that the captain sounded the alarm for abandoned ship or whatever. So we had to go check in there. I had already watched online the announcements that you have to go through, the security briefings you have to go through. So literally, you just go there. You take your room key, which must have some kind of embedded RFID chip in it. You put it on this little reader. It goes ding ding. You're checked in, and then you can go on your way. So we went up to deck 17, which is the Surfside Cafe, which is the Norwegian Prima's buffet. And so we went in there to get our first meal. And I'll say that all the food was presented in a very appealing manner, but for the most part, I think it was blander food than I would be used to, for sure. And I just think it's not necessarily for an American palate. The ship makeup of the guest was probably 1/3 Americans, and then the other 2/3 were, from either the UK, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Germany, France, Spain. It was a pretty well diversified ship, and the crew is made up of over 65 countries. So very international flavor on the ship. That's good. The other thing that I was really surprised by is the amount of children that were on board. And again, because I live in Atlanta, school's already started here, so the kids are back in school. I didn't even really think about the fact that, up north and clearly overseas, that people don't go back until September. I forgot about that. So there was a lot more children on board, and then the other thing that was really interesting was there was a very large group of Muslim women traveling together, and it was super interesting to watch them try and make their food choices, and the various waiters trying to address any food concerns about that they need for them to be able to eat whatever it was that they were considering. So I found that to be pretty interesting. Anyway, following lunch, we went out on the outside deck, which happened to overlook a giant IKEA plant, and sat out there for a while. Then eventually went back down to the Prima Theater, waiting for an announcement that would tell us that our room was ready, because it wasn't ready. No one's room was ready when you get on the ship. And so once that announcement was made, we headed to the room, and for us it was probably the largest, and we got a balcony room, but it's probably the largest balcony room that I've had on any cruise. The balcony itself could have 2 full-size lounge chairs and a small table. You could actually lay the lounge chairs down if you wanted. You had that much space. The room itself, was very large, had a kind of a love seat size couch, and then it had the bed, and then the bathroom actually had, a shower with, it was, in a lot of places they have these like little, it's almost like a turnstile. You stand in the thing and a door kind of rotates around you. This is like a regular shower. It wasn't square. It was more of a, kind of a parallelogram kind of shape. But anyway, it was much larger than, I was expecting. And the bed was super comfortable, so happy with that. The sail away occurred around 5:30, and then shortly after that, we went down to try our first meal in the main dining room. There's 2 main dining rooms on the ship. One's called the Commodore Room, one's called Hudson's. We decided to try the Commodore Room. I started my meal with cauliflower soup. Generally speaking, I find soups on cruises to be pretty good, and this one was so. That was good. Then I had ravioli and lobster sauce, and that was just so-so. And then for my entree, I thought I'd take a staple that, really can't screw up, which was chicken piccata, right? So it's a lemon sauce with, capers and breaded chicken. Like, it's not that hard. Wasn't that good. I'll just leave it at that. Like, I was really disappointed in the chicken piccata. And had I been in a regular restaurant, not on a cruise ship, I literally would have sent it back because it was that not good. And then for dessert, I had an assorted fruit plate, which was fine. The service was really slow, and so net, it wasn't the very best experience for kicking off a new cruise. But anyway, before heading to bed, we had to change our clocks ahead 1 hour because we were heading to Belgium, and the time changed there. So when we went to sleep, I had mentioned in my kind of lead up to taking this cruise, that one of the things that I did was I have Verizon, or Visible by Verizon, and so they have a global pass service so that you can get unlimited talk, text, and data when you're traveling internationally. And what happens is you go to a country, you turn off your phone, you repower it back up, it connects to the network, and they ding you for $10. And now you're on that network and you don't have to worry about any other charges. You just use it when you're in that country. Well, no problem. Well, when I went to bed, I had already paid for the UK. I was expecting to pay for Belgium in the morning, but it didn't occur to me that we'd be sailing along the coast of other countries on the way to Belgium, and my phone could somehow connect to those countries. Well, it did. When we passed by wherever it was in France, it connected. Ding, another $10, even though I literally was never going to use any of it because we were just passing by, and it was the middle of the night when I was asleep. But live and learn, that's what ended up happening. And then day 150, which is August 4th, we arrive in Zeebrugge, Belgium, and we disembarked the cruise ship, and I expected to take an Uber into Bruges. And I had already looked at the pricing beforehand, and I had a general idea of what it was going to be. But what I didn't know in Belgium, and I think that this is true in other countries as well in Europe, but certainly not true here in the US, is when you decide to use an Uber in the US, you say, here's where I am, come get me. You pick whatever kind of car you want and you're on your way, right? They pick you up. Not so in Belgium. You have to go to a defined meet me point, and then they'll show up at that meet me point. They don't come to you. So I don't know where I am when I get off the cruise ship. So I go into Google Maps and it's telling me, go to this address, and there's like walking directions. So anyway, it takes me like 20 minutes to walk over to where they want me to meet me. Meanwhile, in that 20 minutes, because the cruise ship had come in, surge pricing took effect, and the price went up by 30% by the time I got to the point where the car was going to meet me. Well, I wasn't going to pay that amount of money to go into Bruges. So walked 20 minutes back to the cruise terminal, checked what the taxi fares were, and then ultimately selected a tour bus that was going to take me into the city and back, and it was going to be 30 euros a person round trip. So 60 euros for my wife and I to go in. That translated with the currency conversion to $69.59. And the tour bus was plenty comfortable, air conditioned, took us in. The only negative of the tour bus is where they take you is about 10-minute walk through a very nice park to get from there into the main section of Bruges, but not a big deal. So the weather in Bruges was about 70 degrees, but it had a really strong breeze going that day. And the city has wonderful architecture, quaint cafes, cobble-lined streets, swans floating through canals, numerous chocolate stores, museums, churches. Unfortunately, there were multiple cruise lines that came in at the same time, and they all converged on Bruges, and so there was people everywhere. And so there were literally thousands of tourists coming into the city, and had it not been so overly crowded, it would have been a charming little place to visit. But it was really hard to navigate through all the other people that were there, and and then I had a map that they give you. And, you know, I might be incompetent at several things, but reading maps isn't usually one of those things that I'm incompetent at. But I couldn't figure out diddly squat with mapping the street names to what was on this map. And even Google, using the walking section of Google Maps, I couldn't make it work. Like, I was walking around in circles. And when I say that, like, I actually walked, what was it? My Fitbit said I walked over 14,000 steps going through Bruges, trying to, A, see all the things I wanted to see, one, and then two, make my way back to the bus. So, anyway, we really like the city. I would go, you know, if I would go back, I would absolutely go back what I'll call off season. I just think it would be a really nice place to visit when there's a lot less people. And quite honestly, it reminded me a lot of like Quebec City in Canada. But, you know, it has a very, you know, international feeling to it, where you've got a whole group of different folks with different architectural styles, and it's just a really nice place. The other thing I want to point out is, if you ever go to Bruges, they don't use contactless payments. You have to have I'm going to call it 50 cents, but they're, you know, 0.5 euros, right? So instead of a single euro, a half a euro, you can only use half a euro coins if you need to use the water closet or the toilets. If you have two 20s and a 10, can't use it. You have bills, can't use it. Credit card, can't use it. So if you ever think you're going to need to use a restroom when you're visiting the city, make sure that you carry a bunch of, 0.5 euro coins with you. That was like the main drawback. It was crazy. And then we returned to the ship, and there's a place on the ship that's called the Local Bar and Grill. It's the 24-hour eatery. I went in there. I had a Reuben less sauerkraut. It was really good, but it just needed extra Thousand Island, which I made a note of for later in the cruise when I went back to get it. And I also had loaded nachos. They were so, but really, really good Reuben. Then, I was beat from all the walking and stuff, so we took a nap. And then, as I said, according to my Fitbit, I did 14,808 steps while I was in Bruges. I also didn't put on any sunscreen, and I didn't remember to bring a hat. Well, I didn't bring a hat with me to Bruges. I had one on the ship. So 2 no-nos. So I got super sunburned, my face and my balding spot up here, like what wasn't good. Anyway, then for dinner we went to the Surfside Buffet, which is the same place we went when we got on the cruise at the first time. I had the New England clam chowder. That was a soup that wasn't very good on this ship. It was super thin, needed pepper, didn't have very much clams in it. I had stir-fried beef with rice. That was kind of okay. And then I had this apple and fig crumble with vanilla sauce. That was really good. That's my day 150. So then moving on to day 149, which was August 5th, we arrived in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. My alarm didn't go off, or I accidentally turned it off. I don't know which one. Either way, we had to rush to make our tour. So I took a taxi to go to our 2-hour small boat cruise that we had booked. They could have a maximum of 14 people on the boat through the Jordan district. And it circled the second of 3 canals around the city. But I got the taxi, and again, to make sure that I didn't have the same kind of problem that I had in Bruges, I asked the guy, it was 35 euros for the taxi ride over to where we were going. I asked them to make it 40 euros and give me 5 euros back in 0.5 euros, so that if we needed to use any of the toilets or water closets in Amsterdam, we would be prepared. And it still didn't work out, but I'm not going to go into that because I tried using contactless They do support contactless payments. Tried to use it. There were a bunch of people backing up behind me. They tried to use it. Nobody could get it to work. It seemed like all of the ones that were around the area where we were out of service. Ultimately, I ended up having to go into a cafe, buy something I didn't want, just so that I could then show them a receipt so I could go in the back and use their commode. I mean, it ended up being like, I don't know, $11 and something for me to be able to use the toilet because I had to go buy something, and I got like one of the least expensive things on the menu. Whatever. Anyway, the tour itself was excellent. And then, I'm going to be producing a video to show, Amsterdam and what happens when you're on this cruise. But it was a very good cruise. Lasted, like I said, 2 hours. Then we decided to walk back, and we used Google Maps with the walking thing to get back to the ship. It was 2.1 kilometers. We walked through the red light district. It was the daytime, so no biggie. But I'm just saying, like, it was a very interesting walk. The architecture in Amsterdam is really interesting, especially the way that they have pulleys that are at the top of the house, and then all the windows are centered on the pulley. So because of the narrow stairs that they have, basically they hoist anything they want to bring in, anything heavy, furniture, whatever, into the home through the window. So and they're still doing that today. So it's really interesting to look at. Anyway, the people are really friendly there, very low crime rate. My son and daughter-in-law have recommended that we visit. I can see why they liked it. It was a really interesting place. Then we returned to the ship. We had lunch at a place called the Indulge Food Hall, which is basically a grouping that simulates 7 food trucks of different styles. And you sit at a table, you have a tablet, and then you go to whichever food truck you want, or multiple food trucks. Pick whatever you want from the food truck. You place the order, and then someone from that food truck brings you whatever food you ordered. It's by far the best food on the ship that's complimentary. So if you're not going to pay $120 for a couple to go eat at one of the specialty dining places, so actually let me clarify. If you want Mexican, it's $80 for a couple. If you want Italian, it's I think also $80 a couple. And if you want anything else, French, steak, seafood, hibachi, etc., $120 a couple. So that's the specialty dining on the Norwegian Prima. We didn't take advantage of any of that because I'm just too cheap to spend that money for something that I think should be included in the price of the fare that I already paid. From my historical cruises, all the food that I would be getting in those specialty dinings, I used to get as part of the cruise, and so I'm just used to it. I'm just not going to spend the additional money to get stuff that I just think I'm entitled to, I guess, for the fee that I'm paying, because I'm not like taking the lowest price fees on the ship. So I get it, but I know after the pandemic, they ran up a bunch of debt, all these companies, and so they're trying to make back all the money that they need to. So I understand what they're doing. It's just, I don't agree with it, and so I'm not going to support doing that. Anyway, we're in this place called, like I said, Indulge Food Hall, and so I ordered fresh guacamole with chips. That was really good. Fried okra, again, very good. Then I ordered this thing called a cocktail de marisco, which is a mixture of seafood, tomato, lime juice, hot sauce, and plantain chips. And they needed to go a little lighter on the hot sauce because it really overpowered the dish, but otherwise it was okay. And then I ordered Dan Dan noodles, which is Asian minced pork, toasted sesame sauce, mustard greens, scallions, peanuts, and chili oil. And by far, that was my favorite dish on the cruise. And I had it multiple times. 2 thumbs up. Like, that was fantastic. We also did dinner at Indulge, and I had the Chinese lanzhou, and that was good. 2 pork spare ribs, that was just okay. And then I tried a garlic naan, and that was also very good. And then we were supposed to leave Amsterdam at 5:30, but we didn't leave until sometime between 11 and midnight because there were strong winds going in the wrong direction that was affecting the ship's ability to go through the locks that exit Amsterdam into the North Sea. So sometime in that time period, we ended up leaving. And then I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was looking out the balcony sliding door, and we were passing long patches of these glowing red lights that were just off the starboard side of the ship. I never found out what they were, but it was like probably an hour worth of time passing, just row after row after row of these red lights. They might have been windmills or something, I'm not sure. Anyway, the seas were really rough as we went into the North Sea. But it was what it was. Moving on to day 148, which was August 6th. That was our first sea day. So we slept in until noon. And then I tried out my GoPro chesty. So I basically, put it on, and it sits about right here. And then I had the camera on, and I can control it with my phone when I get started. And then pretty much I did a walking film of all of the public areas of the ship. And I'm going to, again, put together a video for anyone interested to see what it's like to see the actual Norwegian Prima with people on it engaged in different activities as you walk around the ship, as well as all the additional things that you can do for additional fees, especially if you have kids. I mean, there's tons of stuff for kids to do on this ship. So, again, they're all extra cost items, but there's a lot of activities that they can get engaged in. So anyway, I did that, and then we stopped so the atrium area of the ship is called the Penrose Atrium. And so we went there at, I don't remember what time it was, but they were giving dance lessons for how to do the Michael Jackson Thriller dance. So my wife and I filmed that, and we watched that for, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, Then we went to the Improv just to watch a comedian, and he was not good at all. And he did multiple shows, and people literally in the middle of his shows would just get up and walk out. He wasn't funny. The bits just didn't resonate with this particular ship, a group of folks on the ship, I should say. Then we went to the Surfside Cafe, and to see if there was any dessert that we wanted. There wasn't. And then you get a card. Looks like a credit card, and that gets you into your room, and it also allows you, like I said, it's got an RFID chip or something that allows you to ring up anything that you want to purchase, drinks, sodas, whatever it is. Somewhere between the Improv and going up the Surfside, I misplaced the card. It dropped out of my pocket. I think I pulled my phone out, and the lip of my phone must have caught the card and flipped it on the floor somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, once I realized I didn't have it, ran down to guest services, had them, because I didn't want to get charged for somebody using it, had them deactivate the card, generate a new card for me. So just like if your credit card gets lost, pretty much the same process. I got a new card, and then we went on our way. Went back to our room, and I ended up watching Reagan the movie before going to sleep. And I thought it was a good movie. Then on day 147, which was August 7th, we arrived in Bergen, Norway. And since we were going to be in Norway for 3 days, and our first thing we had planned was to go to use the funicular, which is like a cable car thing that takes you to the top of the Flowen Mountain, or Mount Flowen. Excuse me. I stopped at a currency conversion store, and I asked them, how much are water closets in Norway? And, they told me, and then I said, basically, give me $10 US converted into Norwegian krona. So I got 91 Norwegian krona for $10. There was a fee of $1.08 for doing the conversion, but at least I then had the appropriate coins broken out so that if we needed to use a restroom anywhere while we were off the ship, we had the money finally to be able to do it, and I didn't have to worry about it. So then we took the funicular up to Mount Flowen, where the views across the fjord and the city were great. It was cool up there, super windy. For the most part, all I ever wear is these shirts, right? Short sleeve shirts, whatever. I took a flannel long sleeve shirt with me, which I used as a jacket while I was up on the top of Mount Flowen because it was really a windbreaker. Like it wasn't too cold for me. It was just really, really windy. And so I wanted to, have something to break the wind. Anyway, when you're up on the top, in addition to the viewing platforms, they've got a restaurant, a cafe, a gift shop. They've got a nature school, a trail forest, some goats up there, an exercise area, barbecue area, smoking area. They got no fee, public toilets. And they also have this giant, what do you call those? Troll, a giant troll that you can take photos with. So we did that, and then we walked back. Again, it was probably, I don't know, mile and a half, something like that. We walked back to the ship. When we got to the ship, I went again to the local pub and grill. I had a Reuben this time with extra Thousand Island, which was perfect. And then I got these pretzel bite things, which come with like a cheese sauce, but I just use it with mustard. Then my wife got a Caesar salad and fettuccine carbonaro. She liked both of those. And while we were sitting there, I was looking at the food of the person next to me. They were looking at what we were doing. We got into a little conversation, found out that they were from Bensalem, Pennsylvania, which when my wife and I first got married, I was working for a company, and the week after we got married, I got transferred to Bensalem, Pennsylvania. So we got into this conversation with them about the area, and just, normal stuff, had a pleasant conversation with them during lunch. So like you run into people all around the world that, are from places where, you've either resided or currently reside. And, it's a, quote unquote, a small world. So then we went up to the Surfside Cafe and we decided to get dessert up there, which was a key lime pie. That was pretty good. I also tasted, they had a corn chowder soup and a vegetable soup. And again, typically soups are good on cruises, not on this one in general. Like, I found a couple that were decent, but the vast majority of soups I wouldn't recommend. Anyway, then for dinner, we ate at the Surfside Cafe again, and virtually nothing was to our liking. It was their pot pie night, and so we tried beef pot pie, chicken pot pie. They were super dry with almost nothing inside. Corn soup wasn't good. Slice of ham was super fatty. Mushroom rice, no taste. Coconut macaroon, too dry. On the positive side, they had a Szechuan eggplant that was good. They had a no sugar brownie that was good, and they had a chocolate coconut macaroon, and I guess the chocolate made it moist enough that one was good. And then after dinner, we watched this game that they play on the ship called Majority Rules Game. So we watched that before heading to bed. And then day 146, which was August 8th, we were in Geiranger, Norway. It's a super small town, population about 250, but it's at the end of one of the most picturesque fjords in all of Norway. So the town itself is basically some gift shops and tour operators that take you up the mountain to the Geiranger lookout. And basically I walked from one end to the town to the other and into the suburbs, right? Taking photos and videos. I was off the ship a total of like an hour to an hour and a half, and I covered, like I said, the whole city. And because of where the way the steep mountains come in the fjord, like the internet connectivity was really poor. But the views down the fjord are really beautiful. I really, even though there wasn't a lot to do there, the scenery was great. There was waterfalls cascading down the mountains. Just, when I got there, it was like a slight drizzle, but it slowly cleared up. And by the time we did our sail away, it was just like an overcast day. But the views, had it been sunny, it would look fantastic. But even being overcast and some sprinkles, it was a really, really pretty place. And so when I got back on the ship again, I went to the indulged food court. My wife had a Cobb salad. I got my my standard trio at this point, which was the Dan Dan noodles, fried okra, and guacamole with chips. Plus, this time I tried some coleslaw from the barbecue place, and that was pretty good. And then for dessert, we went back down to the local bar and grill, and my wife had the chocolate fudge sundae, which she said by far was the best dessert on the cruise. And from all the people we ran into and just chatted about like the food and desserts and whatever, and they all concurred that that was the best dessert on the ship. For me, I settled in on the because I like raspberry. I settled in on the brownie raspberry cheesecake, and that became like my go-to. Then we went up to the observation lounge on deck 17, which is basically a semicircle, all glass at the top of the ship that has lounge chairs and regular kind of chairs, whatever. But you can like look out and when the boat's moving or when it's not, just relax up there with tea or coffee, and they've got like little sandwiches and stuff. Anyway, we were up there and I got a cup of tea with honey, and we just kind of chilled out. My wife then sat down with her iPad and got her like bingo credits, and she played this game Township or whatever. And then we just, we were looking at, and there's this road that kind of goes up the mountain, and all of a sudden I noticed that all the cars were stopped, and it was backing up, and then it was cars backed up as far as the eye could see. Like I couldn't see where they weren't bumper to bumper. And then I saw a yellow helicopter come in over the mountain and then land, and come to find out later on that a guy coming down the mountain, they're really narrow roads, and they have tour buses that go up to the Geiranger viewpoint. And there's a very narrow, I guess when you're going up the road, there's a very narrow space between the buses and somebody coming down the other side. And I don't know if he's on a scooter or a bike or some other vehicle, but apparently he crashed into the bike and was hurt bad enough that they had to airlift him off the mountain. And so they shut down this one section so that the helicopter could come in, and that's what caused this really, really long backup. And, they were stuck there for well over an hour, probably closer to 2. So felt bad for the people stuck in the thing, and clearly for the guy who got hurt. Anyway, then late in the afternoon, got a call from my son and daughter-in-law, and they informed us that they're pregnant. And so I'm happy for them, but I'm not ready to think of myself as a grandfather yet. Like that's like something that makes me feel really old thinking about it. Not that I have any say in it, but I was really happy to get the news from them. So that was cool. And then we went out to dinner at one of the main dining rooms. This time we decided to try Hudson's, and my wife had 3 cheese ziti, and she said that was good. I had this thing, seafood paella, which next to my Dan Dan noodles was the second best thing on the menu for the time we were on the ship. So that was really good. And then for dessert, we both had a Snickers pound cake, and I had a assorted fruit plate. That was fine. And then the sail away started, and it was supposed to be, again, because it was overcast, it was supposed to be a little earlier sail away, and I expected it to be light. But we didn't actually sail away till 9:45, so it was already getting dark, and then we didn't finish getting down the edge of the fjord where all the really interesting stuff is until about 10:30. So I did my best to adjust my camera and stuff so that I could film the main attraction of this particular fjord, which is called the Seven Sisters Waterfall. So I did that. I know that I've got some actual photography ones that came out good. I haven't been able to go through all of my videos yet to see whether or not the actual videos that I took of the Seven Sisters is good or not. Like it might be too dark. I don't know. I will obviously figure it out and make whatever post-production adjustments I can as I'm putting together my Norwegian or or my Norway summary for this particular location before posting it. Anyway, day 145, August 9th, we arrive in Ålesund, Norway, where I attempt to climb the 418 steps that go up to the, I don't know how to pronounce this, Geiranger viewpoint on Alska Mountain. So I knew there's 418 steps. I was totally mentally prepared for that. But what they don't tell you is you got to hike up about a half a mile up pretty steep hills before you get to the bottom of the steps. And they also don't tell you that the steps aren't like regular steps. They're more like 1.5 to double height steps that are like kind of, I want to say some are, I don't know if it's granite or, something like granite, whatever, some stones that you're like climbing over, and you're doing this like back and forth motion going up the mountain. Anyway, I get up to step 213. I'm up high enough now that I can see over the entire city. I can film everything I want to film. So I do. And then I say to myself, wow, 213 up, 213 down. That's more than 418. I'm good with that because my legs were killing me by the time I got to 213. It was like doing lunges because the steps were so high every time you were doing it. And my legs were buckling by the time I got to 213. And I just kept saying, if I go up the rest of the way, I don't know that I'll be able to make it back down. So I called it quits at 213. And, I went back down. Like I said, my legs were buckling. And then the front of my hamstrings were killing me for the next 2 days from the workout of doing that. Anyway, before heading down, back down from the mountain, I stopped at their cafe and I got I wanted a Diet Coke, but they didn't have that, so they had Coke Zero. And so I got a Coke Zero, which doesn't taste like Coke Zero here in the States. It's way less sweet. I don't know what the sweetener is that they're using, but it cost me 58 Norwegian krona, which translates to $5.68 for, like, it wasn't 16.9 ounces, but whatever the milliliters were approximately for that kind of a size drink, that's what it was. And then we walked to the city center. We stopped in a 7-Eleven actually, and we got a Snickers bar there. And again, different sweeteners, not as sweet as what it is in the States when you get a Snickers. And then we also passed by a Burger King, so I kind of took a snapshot looking through the window at the board, whatever, the ordering board, because I wanted to be able to look to see what they actually have at a Burger King to order, what the general prices are. I haven't spent time actually looking at it yet, but I've got that to compare later. And then we passed by this music store on the way back that was displaying old radio and 8-track players. And I took a picture of one of them, sent it to my mom, because I was like, I know that it was the same thing that my father used. This one was orange, but my dad had a white one. And I said, I know it was in his office for as long as I can remember. And I didn't know if my mom still had it. And she claimed, after I sent her the picture, she said, oh yeah, she still has it. So I just thought it was interesting that I haven't seen one of those anywhere else. And then, walking through, and there it is. Anyway, we got back on the ship, again went to the indulged food hall. This time I tried pulled pork without a bun and extra barbecue sauce. It was really good. Tried some chili, got the okra, don noodles, all of that was good. Then this time for dinner, we went to the Commodore main dining room, and we finally had a waiter, Emelana, from Indonesia, that provided service like you used to get in the old days on cruises. She floated around the dining room. She anticipated what you wanted. Let's say, I don't know, you needed another drink if you're having coffee or tea or water, whatever it was. It magically got refilled before you needed it refilled. Your plates were whisked away. The next thing was done. The timing of her delivery of stuff, she just was exceptional. So, and her service was impeccable. So I wrote a note to NCL praising her, and I made sure to provide it to the senior staff of the hotel management on the cruise line before we left, because like by far she was the best waiter that we ran into the entire cruise. And then as for the food, my wife ended up having lemon pepper shrimp with orzo as her entree, and I had shrimp alfredo with mushrooms. Both of those were really good. Unfortunately, the starters, which were a Caesar salad and grilled bay scallops, and dessert, which was a molten, not really, I'm going to call it a molten cake. I think they were trying to do like a molten lava cake. Anyway, didn't pan out. So those things weren't that good. And then after dinner, we again went up to the Surfside Cafe and we got some hot tea with honey. And then we took it to the observation lounge where we just sat down and relaxed with that. And then before bed, we ended up watching the movie Venom: Last Dance. Not a movie I would recommend. So anyway, that ended that day. Then day 144, which was August 10th, that was a sea day. So that sea day we were transferring from Norway over to Iceland. And so I caught the end of a future cruise presentation in the morning highlighting Norwegian Caribbean's 2026 and 2027 itineraries and the new ships that they're going to be launching in that time frame. That was followed up by an excellent presentation and Q&A session put on by Captain Roger of the Prima and the chief engineer, whose name was Giorgio. And as I indicated previously, there's over 65 countries represented on the Prima. Only one Norwegian, and that's the captain. I just thought that was funny. And by far, this captain, I think this is my 15th cruise. Of all the cruises I've been on, this captain was by far the best. He not only navigated his ship extremely well, made sure that we had, even in rough seas, there was nominal movement of the ship. He would change directions so that the waves would hit the boat a different way to make sure that it was as smooth as possible. But he was also the most informative captain I've ever listened to. He did a daily speech that would go over in a variety of details what was going to be happening for the day, how the ship was doing whatever it was doing. They'll let you ask questions of it. I mean, he was just fantastic. So, again, writing to Norwegian about him because he was just great. And then for lunch, I decided to go to the main dining room for a change, and we went to Hudson's. And so I tried the Vietnamese chicken pho, which I normally like. But this really wasn't pho. It was like a weak chicken soup with minced chicken thrown in and some other greens. Like it was eh. And then I had a shrimp fritter appetizer. That was good. Baja fish tacos. They were mediocre. And my wife had a BLT, which, like, how can you mess up a BLT? But that was mediocre too. And for dessert, we both had peanut butter cheesecakes, and they were both good. Then I killed some time in different venues. I was playing solitaire, ran up a bunch of points. Anyway, then we had dinner at the local bar and grill. So I had pretzel bites, 6 barbecue chicken wings, a Reuben with extra Thousand Island, and a brownie raspberry swirl cheesecake for dessert. And that ended that day. And then on day 143, which was August 11th, 2025, we arrived in Akureyri, Iceland. And we set off on a 6-hour tour to Lake Mavaten and the Godafoss waterfall from the Eureka port. And the weather was fantastic. And while I wish I could give the excursion that we went on a 5-star review, I can't. And it's not because of the tour operator. They did a fine job escorting us between the sites and providing a knowledgeable Icelandic guide. His name was Danny. But because of 2 of the 4 stops. So first I'm going to just talk about the bad. Like Crater Row, and I can't say this word, at Skustadar is a freaking waste of time. And it's swarming with midges. And anybody who's watching my videos know I bought a special ultrafine mesh just because I was concerned about the midges. And I had it handy and I used it, and anybody that didn't was miserable. And so those people were sitting there swatting stuff like you couldn't focus on anything because those things, there were 20 different kinds of midges. Two of them were biting. It was horrible. Um, anyway, not much to see there. Annoying midges. They did have free public toilets, so that was a good thing. And then the second place was, and again, I'm bad with the names, but Namfajal, I think it's Herrera, which can best be described, it's supposed to be bubbling mud pits, right? Well, it can best be described as an attraction that looks and smells like you're watching a broken sewer pipe gushing up. I mean, it's disgusting. And by the way, they built like a little grooved bridge so you can go over the mud pits, which supposedly come up to like 100 degrees centigrade. And, right, it stinks horribly. And for the people that, like, I walked over it because I wanted to photograph it, right? But for the people that were actually standing there, right, and the stuff's coming up, well, some of those people were on my bus, and the fumes permeated their clothes. So once they got back onto the bus, you were smelling that for freaking like another hour. It was ridiculous. I mean, it was just horrible. Anyway, those two things sucked. Now for the good, right? So then, Debarkation lava formations. Our guide took us on a 40-minute stroll through the formations, shared stories, historical facts, in fact, showed us where the North American and the European tectonic plates are separating. I took a photo of that. It was really an interesting experience there, and the lava formations were really cool. Just a side note, if you want to use the restrooms there, it's 3 Norwegian krona to use the restrooms. And there's a really long line to get the tickets to be able to go in to use the restroom. So, luckily for me, I didn't need to do that. But, for anyone who did, it was a long line. You missed a whole bunch of stuff, and, you spent your time basically trying to get your tickets to use the restroom. Then we went to the Godafoss waterfall, which was the main thing I wanted to see. But that place is magical for people like me who like chasing waterfalls. I mean, it was the highlight of the day. It's a super easy walk to the falls. You can get great photos. I did check my GoPro videos of the falls. They came out fantastic. I photographed them in 5G, 60 frames a second, crystal clear. I mean, I'm super excited about that. I'll be able to take and blow up photos and stuff of the falls for myself. Super happy with the way that went. Plus, the tour operator at the end of the falls gives you a ticket for a complimentary tea or coffee and a Icelandic pastry at the Godafoss Hotel. And inside the hotel, there's free toilets if you need to use those. Anyway, the scenery along the way to get to these different places in the back has really long stretches where there's nothing but hay fields. They're very green hay fields, but basically, the farmers there grow tons of hay so that in the winter months, they have the hay to feed their animals, right? So, but you're going through miles, and I mean, it takes like well over an hour to get to the first place. So, like, you're just driving through stuff that's, I was actually commenting to my wife, it reminded me like going through certain parts of Ireland where you just see the different colors of green and stuff. But my wife was like, Ireland's prettier. So anyway, again, I was like, give it like 3 stars out of 5 for this particular tour. And I don't know if there's other alternatives that they can replace Crater Row and the Navafal Herrera with, but if they can, I highly recommend doing that because, for the amount of money that you pay for this trip, those two things just absolutely suck. Anyway, we ended up returning back from that particular tour. We went up to the Surfside Cafe. That night they had Oriental Fair themed dinner. We found a variety of foods on the buffet that we liked. That were, like I said, it was like Korean barbecue. There was some various stir fries and stuff. They actually were all pretty good. Then we had to go down before 7 p.m. and have a face-to-face meeting with the Icelandic customs folks. And, they ask you a couple questions or whatever. And, I got my first stamp in my new passport, from Iceland. So that was kind of cool. And then later we went to what's called Showtime, which is Sid Norman's tribute to Rumors. So the cast of Sid Norman's, which is a venue on the ship, presented a classic Fleetwood Mac album, Rumors, in its entirety and discussed the backstory, to one of rock and roll's greatest soap operas. So that was that day. Then day 142, which was August 12th, 2025, we arrived in Ísafjörður, Iceland. And we took a 3.5-hour sightseeing tour to the Geiranger waterfall. Our driver for the bus, his name was Adrian, and the guide was Soli. And the weather in Ísafjörður when I got off the ship was rainy and really, really windy. But by the time the bus cleared the mountains and got to the waterfall area, it was clear. So that part was great. But I am super thankful that I had my rain gear that we brought with us, because getting from the ship to the distance where the bus was, it was like walking through a monsoon. The wind was blowing so hard. You had this driving rain, like you would have been soaked by the time you got to the bus. Then you would have to sit for an hour and 25 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes, dripping wet, to get to the waterfall, and then you would have to, in your dripping wet clothes, make it up to the waterfall. Like it would have been really uncomfortable. So super happy that we spent the money and bought the waterproof stuff, and it worked out great. So we were dry the whole time. And our guide did a great job filling the time driving out for the hour and 25 minutes or so, hour and 15 minutes that it took us getting there. He gave us various Icelandic interesting tidbits, Icelandic stories. That part was good. The driver did a great job navigating the roads and the tunnels, getting us to the location and back. And one of the interesting things is, on the way to Geiranger, you have to traverse the longest tunnel in Iceland. And I can't pronounce the name. It's like Vestafjörður. Anyway, it stands for the Westfjords Tunnel. That's what it means. The length of the tunnel is 9.1 kilometers or 5.66 miles. The interesting part of that is a certain percentage of the tunnel, I don't want to say exactly 50%, but let's call it half. It's a single lane. When they built the tunnel, they didn't think there was going to be that much traffic going through. So the part of the tunnel's got the 2 lanes, but then when you get to a certain part, it's 1 lane. The other thing that's also really cool is when you're under the tunnel, you can actually branch off through other tunnels from the main tunnel to go to other cities. So that was really cool. But when you're going through this tunnel and you get to the single lane, and I'm making up the number here, but let's say every 100 yards, 150 yards, it's pretty frequent. They've got these little, what they call meet-me points, that are like just wide enough for a car to move over or a bus to move over. And they're no longer than the length of a bus. And so all of a sudden you see headlights coming towards you. And if you're in again, I'm going to say the northbound side, if you're in the one going towards the Geiranger, you're required to move over into the meet-me point and then let the traffic go by. We had to do that more than 20 times. So it seems like priority is being given to the south side coming in, because when we were coming back, we didn't have to pull over at all. Only when we were going out, we, like I said, kept having to move over to the side to let the oncoming traffic go. But it was a really interesting thing to go through the tunnel. And then the landscape on the way there is beautiful. And we also got to see gray seals in one of the fjords, and then there was an Arctic fox up on the mountain, so that was kind of cool. And then when you get to Geiranger, they've got free water closets or toilets near the bus drop-off and pickup points. And by the way, the reason I keep mentioning this is it's actually a really big issue when you're visiting these different places, because each place is at least an hour or longer away. And it becomes a problem when you've got a bus or you have multiple buses showing up somewhere, and you then have long lines of people that need to use the restroom. And when you're not prepared, it really becomes issues for people. So that's the only reason why I keep bringing this up, because the amount of lines that you will see is amazing. Anyway, the waterfall itself at Geiranger is very nice. You have the option to hike up to a variety of different lookout platforms. The first two platforms are pretty easy to get to. The ones up higher, not so easy. You've got to climb over rocks and pretty mucky areas. So you have to have good hiking boots or something with really good traction to be able to grab on. Otherwise, you're going to easily, fall and get hurt. And, my wife went to the second platform and then she stopped but I was determined, since I didn't do the 418 steps and make it all the way to the top, I was determined to get to the top of this waterfall, to the main platform. So I did. And, I really enjoyed this particular excursion, and I would recommend it to people that like chasing waterfalls like me. I mean, that's one of the things I do is I go pretty much everywhere I go. If there's a waterfall, I'm going to see it. Like, I just really like, and I got hundreds and hundreds of pictures, a variety of waterfalls, in Atlanta, in Tennessee, and all these other places. Caving and waterfalls are the two things I really like doing. Anyway, when we got back on the ship, again, ate at the local bar and grill, my pretzel bites. This time I had chili, a hamburger, and my raspberry brownie cheesecake. And my wife had a Cobb salad, a Reuben, and a hot fudge sundae. And since this, excuse me, was the last day where we had any booked excursions, I decided that I was going to sit down and write reviews for all the ones that I went on, and submit those to the specific or the respective platform. So I took care of that. And then for dinner, we again went to the Surfside Cafe and I tried my first bread pudding. It wasn't bad. I also had minestrone soup, and I had, what was the other soup? No, I think that was it. I had minestrone soup. That was pretty good. And I had a cup of tea with honey. And then I went back to our room and I watched The Dark Knight, which I'd seen previously, but I was killing time. Then, day 141, August 13th, we arrive in Reykjavík, Iceland. I didn't have anything planned, so what we decided to do was take the free transfer that takes you from the cruise terminal out to the Opera Center near the city center of Reykjavík. So we did that, and then we were going to get on the hop-on, hop-off bus. So I went on, there's a little QR code at the sign there, you scan it, you can then pay for your tickets right there. I got my tickets, waiting for the bus. Well, what was happening was people were getting on the bus. There's 16 stops on the bus that circle around the city. They were getting on the bus, and it also gives you earbuds to connect in, and you can, I think there's like 7 different languages, and it's like a narrated tour as you go around the city. Well, people were getting on the bus, and they were riding around the whole loop first before deciding that they were going to hop on and hop off. So I had to stand there for like an hour waiting because there was never any empty seats on the bus because people just kept riding around. Finally, I want to say like 6-7 buses went by. Finally, I was able to get on. We went up to the top of the bus and rode around to, I think, about the 5th stop. And then my wife decided that she wanted to hop off. There was a nice little park there. We were going to step off. So we got off and we're walking across the park. And all of a sudden, my wife takes a step, and out of nowhere, like something happened to her knee. And all of a sudden, she was in excruciating pain and she couldn't walk. And I had to get somebody to help flag down the bus and then hold the bus there so that I could act as a crutch and kind of help my wife back over to the bus. And then a woman was kind enough on the bus to give my wife her seat so she could sit down. We then waited about 4 more steps till my wife wanted to go see the Hallgrímska Church, which is at stop 9. By then, she was able to at least walk a little bit. I got her off the bus. She walked, I don't know, let's call it 75 steps to come around to the front of the church. She let me take some pictures there. She hobbled back to the bus stop. The bus came. We got on the bus. We then went from stop 9 to stop 16, which was the cruise terminal. By then, I got her off the bus, helped her get back up onto the ship, and then we went to the indulged food court for lunch. And then I checked in on British Airways because we were going to be flying home the next day. And again, because of what I started with at the beginning, I changed our seats so that my wife was sitting in a different location than where we were in the first time, and I also, because of her leg, set up for wheelchair access, so that end to end she'd be able to get wheelchair assistance, because there was no way she's going to be able to walk the distances that we needed to walk. So once that was taken care of, and I had my boarding passes, everything, and we packed our luggage, we gave it to the cabin steward so that he could then take it and put it in the appropriate place to be inspected so that we could pick it up in the morning when we were going to be taking the NCL transfer down to the airport. We had dinner in the main dining room at Hudson's, and we went to bed at about 9:30 that night because we had to be up at 4:45 in the morning to be off the ship by 6 to catch the transport to the Keflavik airport. So that takes me to day 140, which is August 14th, 2025. We got up, we took our showers, then we began the debarkation process. And we were off the ship, got our luggage, and we're on the transfer bus by 6:11. So in 11 minutes, we made it through the whole process. It was by far the easiest debarkation from a cruise ship I've ever had. So then we get on the bus. The bus drives to Keflavik Airport in about an hour, well, 45 minutes from Reykjavík. Excuse me. We get to the airport around 7. I go in. There's bag drop kiosks. I go up to the kiosk. I'm trying to get the luggage tags generated. Cannot make it work. I finally tracked down an airport staff, and I'm like, where is British Airways ticketing counter? Because I can't find it. So the person tells me, oh, you got to go all the way down over here and go all the way to the end. It's down there. So my wife kind of stays with her bags, and I go running off. And I get to the end, no British Airways. I find some other staff, and they're like, oh no, whoever told you that gave you the wrong information. It's actually all the way at the other end, right, the opposite side. And it's ticket counters 1 through 3. But British Airways doesn't come online until 8 o'clock, and they share those ticketing gates with some other no-name airline that I never heard of. So I get my wife, we make it over to gates 1 to 3. There's several other people standing there, and wait. Finally, we stand there for an hour. About 3 minutes to 8, here comes some British Airways folks, and they decide they're going to create 3 lines, one for each of the ticket counter 1, 2, and 3. So the first line is going to be their premier customers, the second line is going to be the bag drop-off, and the third line is going to be standard customers or people that haven't checked in electronically or whatever. That's what's going to happen. So I'm like the second person in line in the bag drop line. And I'm standing there, and it takes me 30, they're so disorganized that 30 minutes later, I finally give them my bags. And they also tell me that because of the airline, which is an A320, Airbus A320, they're going to have limited space on the airplane in the overhead compartments. So they're going to give you complimentary check your carry-on luggage through to your final destination free of charge, which is usually like $200 on British Airways to check the extra bag. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. They'll make it easier for me to, with the wheelchairs and everything, not have to worry about carrying the luggage. So I'm like, that's good. So I get, the lady gives me the 4 tickets now because our 2 main bags plus 2 carry-ons. So I have, with our boarding passes, I get the tickets with each of the numbers for the luggage, and then I make sure that that in the computer there's like, my wife's got a wheelchair. They're going to be able to help us go from because we're flying into Heathrow Terminal 5. I need to be able to move her over to Terminal 3 for the connecting flight. There's somebody there that's going to be there to help me do this because it's a long way. They're like, absolutely, in the computer, the person will meet the plane. I'm like, okay. So, get on the plane. 3 hours later, we're landing. A little over 3 hours later, actually, that's not true. About more like 3.5 because we ended up being 15 minutes late. We land at Heathrow. And we work our way to the front of the plane, get off. Is there a wheelchair person there? No, there is not. I have my wife stand off to the side. I go run down the jetway or whatever you call it, out to the main area. I find a woman who has the wheelchair. I bring her down to get my wife. She wheels my wife to the top of the jetway and then she stops. And I'm like, well, we got to get over to Terminal 3. And the lady's like, oh no. Well, my job is to get you off the plane. There's nobody here to wheel you over there. You want to take her? Go ahead. Here's the wheelchair. And I'm like, fine. How do I get there? And she's like, you got to figure it out. Anyway, so I find the guy that meets the plane that tells you, go to this gate or that gate for your connections, the connection agent. So I go up to him and I'm like, listen, I only have a limited amount of time to get to the plane. I don't know how to do that. I got to get my wife with this wheelchair and this lady's not going to help me. What do I do? Anyway, he's super nice. He takes us down to where the bus goes to get the connection. And then he goes out to the bus driver, and the bus drivers won't let us take the wheelchair on the bus. So he's like, I have to go back and talk to British Airways and find out what to do. So he walks away with my wife's boarding pass. 5-10 minutes later, he comes back. He's like, you're going to have to hobble onto the bus, go to the next terminal, find somebody over there with the wheelchair, and then go from there. I'm like, okay. So third bus comes by. We get on, takes us over to Terminal 3. My wife gets off. I find a lady that's got the wheelchair, comes get my wife. She takes us up to security, and then security goes, oh no, you're within the 1 hour window, so we can't let you through. You're going to have to get rebooked on another flight because there's not enough time for you to get to the gate. I'm like really pissed at this point. I run the wheelchair over to the rebooking area. I explain to the guy at the rebooking what we're trying to do. He literally jumps over the counter, goes, come with me. I take the wheelchair with my wife in it, go back to security. He gets us to go through security. They let us go in. We go through all the security checks. He waits at the other side. I get my wife in again, get her going. And now I'm like sprinting, pushing a wheelchair down to the gate. We get to the gate and the gate agent goes, oh no, they're closing the door. You can't get on the plane. I'm like, at this point, I'm pissed, right? And I'm just like raising Cain. And they get a supervisor, and the supervisor goes, I'll get you on. So, we do what we need to do. They let us through. We're the last people on the plane. I am dripping because of pushing this wheelchair and stuff. My wife gets in her seat. Luckily, I carry a little USB fan with me, right? And luckily, my seat has, under the little display thing, a USB connection. I plug that sucker in, and I put the fan on high because I'm sitting there going, I am dying. It's so hot, right? And the fan's blowing on me. So I finally start cooling down. And then, as it turns out, there's a delay at Heathrow for 30 minutes anyway. So we just have to sit there on the plane waiting for 30 more minutes before they can even push back. So I was like, as I said, pretty pissed at this point. But, we made it on the plane. So the flight itself was fairly uneventful, right? I had a crying baby in front of me. A couple rows behind me, I had a girl that was like 4 or 5 who just wanted to get her mother's attention. So she decided in her squeaky voice that she was just going to scream at the loudest possible way. So people around her couldn't sleep or whatever. I took out my noise-canceling headphones, put those in. I watched 2 movies, and I also listened to a bunch of albums that I had brought with me, and I couldn't hear them over the noise-canceling headphones, so that thing worked out great. 9 hours later, we land in Atlanta. Get off the plane. Is there a wheelchair there for my wife? No. Get a guy, get the wheelchair. Get my wife in the wheelchair, comes up to the top of the land, has to get into a different wheelchair. So I find this really nice guy, then pushes my wife over to customs, where we then go in a customs line with wheelchairs. Finally get through customs, go to baggage claim, go pick up my 4 bags. They're not there. I then have to, while the guy's waiting with my wife, I go every carousel at Atlanta, which is a lot, walk the whole thing. 30 minutes later, I come back, our bags are not there. So I go and talk to the people in the baggage area, and they're like, what airline is it? And I said, British Airways. They're like, that's the only airline that we can't look up the information on. You have to go over to baggage services outside the main area here. You can find a British Airways person, and they'll figure out what happened to your luggage. Guy takes us out. I go to the British Airways baggage service. The normal person's not working there. So there's this other guy, Travis, who's just like filling in. And so he tells me I have to fill out this baggage report claim. I electronically fill it out. He's like, that's it, you can leave. And I'm like, well, there's only 2 tickets on here. I got 4 tickets. And he's like, and I said, it won't let me put any more things in. And he's like, I'll manually add it for you. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, how am I going to know you actually added it? And he said, you'll get an email. I'm like, okay. So a friend of mine had agreed to pick us up. So do me a favor and pick us up. So I now text him. He's been waiting for us. He comes over. We get in the car. Excuse me. And we get home. So now, 22 hours after I start this process, I'm finally in my house. That's the end of that day. Then, day 139, August 15th, I check the baggage report with British Airways. And it comes up and it says, they've located my 2 bags. They're not at the airport, but they've located them. And I now have to submit new reports for the other tag numbers because the guy didn't do what he told me he was going to do. So I go in, add those additional tag things to the system, excuse me, under my wife's name. And then about 6 hours later, I get a thing that says, they found those bags. And I'm like, great. So by the end of the day, they have found wherever the 4 bags ended up, whether it was still in Iceland, whether they're still sitting in London, wherever they were. And they said, they've scheduled delivery to come to my house. And it was going to be delivered between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. on August 16th. So I was like, great. So that was the end of that day. Now we get to today, day 138, August 16th, 2025. My delayed luggage is delivered to my home at 4:36 a.m. this morning. So everything made it okay. So I'm thankful for that, right? My biggest concern for anybody that's been watching this channel is that my wife had a heart issue before we went on this cruise, and all of her original medications were in those carry-ons. And so we didn't have the medications for her to take on her regimen because we didn't have the bags. And at home, we didn't have any extras because they gave us just enough pills for her to get through the trip. And then she was going to have to reorder stuff after we got back. But you need the original bottles with the numbers to be able to reorder. So meanwhile, as soon as we got the bags, unpacked the bags, got out her meds, made her take the meds so that I was comfortable that she was on her regimen, right? And then after that, I sat down because today's Saturday, and I did my weekly financial review because I haven't obviously looked at it for 2 weeks. And so we ended up over this 2-week period while we were on the cruise, ended up being up 1.3% over the period while we were away. So now for the year, we're up 9.56% across our portfolio. So super happy about that, right? And then I spent the rest of today running between stores, restocking our pantry and our refrigerator because I had no food in the house. And because we knew we were going away for several weeks, we basically ate down everything that we had either in the fridge or in the pantry. So all day I was basically doing shopping. And I still have like 3-4 things I still have to get, but otherwise I finally got everything restocked in the fridge, the freezer, the pantry. We're good with that. And then my son and daughter-in-law are arriving in the morning. They're taking the red eye out of California tonight. They'll be arriving at like 6:30 or something in the morning. Excuse me. And so they're going to be staying with us this week. Yesterday, their car was picked up. And so the car, their pods, whatever, all of that's going to be transferred. And then it's going to be showing up on the 22nd, excuse me again. And so they'll be staying with us and then fly to Raleigh at the end of the week. So now that I covered the 2 weeks, and you notice I mentioned a bunch of food stuff, right? We kept going to these same kind of places over and over again. So you would expect that after 2 weeks of eating the quantity of foods that I was kind of describing as I've been going through this video, that I would have gained weight and my wife would have gained weight. Not so. So I actually lost 5.6 pounds on this cruise and my wife lost like 2. Right? So I dropped from 209.8 pounds to 204.2 pounds weighing in. Presumably because of all the walking I was doing, but I don't know. But like I said, the food wasn't that good. So even though I had lots of these little, I'm going to call them tapa meals, like they were very pretty presentations with not so much food in them. And so even though when I describe the stuff, it sounds like I've got a lot of food, the actual quantity that you were consuming really wasn't that much. So anyway, this is my long-winded rundown of what was the last 16 days, right? And I'm going to get back into my daily pattern tomorrow. I'm also going to be putting together individual videos that I'll put on my travel playlist that will cover each of the destinations we visited for those of you that are interested in seeing one or more of those destinations. Again, I did my best to film those in high def 5.3K, and I used the wide angle lens for a lot of the places to give the widest possible landscape views so that people could get a feel for what those areas are like. I also did a general walkthrough, like I said, of all the public areas on the Prima, and I'll probably put out a Prima video at some point anyway. So for those of you that are still with me, thanks for watching. Sorry for this long-winded catch-up, but I wanted to make sure that I had documented every day in my countdown, so now this catches me back up. So, and I'll, get back on, like I said, on my normal plan starting tomorrow. But if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section down below or drop me an email at myretirementramblings@gmail.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great evening, and until tomorrow, take care.